Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome to Culture Conversations, Lessons in Leadership, where we bring together leaders, experts, and change makers to share the real lessons behind leadership, culture, and team success. I'm your host, Denitresse Ferrell, founder and CEO of Culture Refinery, where we help organizations optimize the return on their most critical investment, talent. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Dr. Jeronica Goodwin, Senior Vice President and Chief People Officer at a large multi hospital health system. We're so excited to have Dr. Goodwin joining us. Jeronica is not only a strategic HR executive, but she is a leadership developer, a culture builder, and a fierce advocate for resilience and equity in healthcare. With more than 2 decades of experience guiding people strategy across complex systems, she brings a powerful lens to what it means to lead with both heart and intention. So I'm excited to learn from her journey and experience. I hope you all are as well. Jeronica, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. I am happy to be here. My pleasure.
Awesome. So let's dive in by looking back a little bit. I always like to look back on the early days. So, reflecting on your early days in leadership, what's one thing you would do differently in that first people leadership role now that you spent your career helping others really step into theirs?
Wonderful question. So, I started in leadership at the age of 25 and I was a director. So, I skipped all levels. I went from an intern to a staff member to a director of the hospital system was about 6,500 employees. And I was one of five HR directors. And so I think the challenge, before I answer your question specifically, the challenge of being a very young leader is that you're still young and there's so many things that you don't know. You don't know truly what you don't know. You don't know all the right questions to ask. And you can be trained on, how to look and how to talk. But leadership is so much more than that. So if I had to say a reflection as to what I would have done differently, I think I would have had more counsel on executive presence
Mm.
because it really is more about the competency is more about the skills, it's more about the external image, but it's really about the whole package. How do you engage with board members? How do you engage with providers if you're in healthcare or if you're in another industry? How do you engage with those constituents that have power and influence? I think my saving grace was the fact that I knew about HR. I had a passion for it. So I was always studying it.
Hmm.
And I had the image, the professional image, because I've been through inroads. I'm a graduate of Urban League interns. And so I had that professional image outwardly, but what I learned quickly in spending so many years at the professional level is that it's just even much more than that. It's really how you engage with people and how do you handle conflict. And when you're young, when you're 25, you handle it like a 25-year-old. So age and wisdom is important in leadership.
Hmm.
But I think there's some ways to get around it if you're put in that position at such an early stage in your career. So I would say executive presence.
I love that. I love that. And I love that as you talked it through, it wasn't, you really got into the nuance of executive presence beyond what we often default to just image, right?
Mhm.
It's beyond that. It truly is how you engage, how you build relationship, how you communicate, how you connect, right? That's what you're speaking to in order to influence, no
Absolutely.
matter where you are in the organization. So that's amazing. So that
Exactly.
hindsight is something that comes really valuable, increasingly valuable when you start supporting others, right? Being in the HR space and being in a more senior leadership role, right? You have the honor, the responsibility for not just your career and your leadership approach, but that of those that are coming behind you and that you are responsible for. And so you've seen, I'm sure, a lot of new managers step
Mhm,
into that first role,
mhm.
oftentimes under pressure, urgency amidst change. What are some of the patterns that you've noticed in those early struggles? And what kind of support or coaching have you seen that actually helps them succeed?
The number one thing that I've seen, characteristic flaw that I've seen from new leaders, both in terms of their experience in being new, as well as their age in terms of starting into their career, is the lack of patience.
Mm, mhm,
There's a lot of decisions that I've seen new leaders make that are rash decisions that lack a lot of thought, a lot of intentionality, a lot of strategy. And if they had taken the moment to just step back, take a deep breath, not get overwhelmed, not have too much anxiety, they would have made better decisions with a clearer head.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so I've seen a lot of leaders really almost destroy their career because they made very quick, unthoughtful decisions that not only impacted others, but most importantly, impacted themselves.
mhm,
The other character flaw that I've seen that a lot of leaders make, especially new leaders, and also more seasoned leaders, quite frankly, is that they don't stick around during the hard times. Organizations want transformational leaders. They want leaders with a stick to itness. You can't run when it gets challenging. You have to attack those challenges head on. And you have to be able to galvanize a group of people that can get buy-in with what you're trying to do and that can help you accomplish the goal. But running away too soon and trying to run to the next organization when it gets hard, and then when that organization gets hard, then you're off to the next organization. I've seen leaders that can't bounce back from that because your resume shows it. It shows how you move around. And although that is more acceptable now, the question will be asked when the going gets tough, how do you respond? And so those are the two most characteristics that I've seen over the years that I feel have really crippled leaders, both new leaders and seasoned leaders. And I think if there was a revisioning of those two things, then they would be much more successful.
mm. I want to go off script just a second, if you will, because this is so meaty. A lot of times we hear, and it's been, especially over the last maybe 5 years or so, as people are being more intentional about their careers and more intentional about the spaces and the organizations that they're willing to sort of stay in and give loyalty to. What I'm curious from your perspective is how do you differentiate between, are we in challenging times or am I in a space that doesn't support what I needed to support, right? Is it the space or are these just the times that I need to get through?
Excellent question. It's self awareness, it's being honest with yourself. Am I running from something? Am I not being honest with where I am in my career versus where I should be? Am I expecting unrealistic outcomes from my employer that don't match what I'm inputting? You know, we expect our employers to pay us very high salaries, give us great packages, but do we deserve that? Honestly, Competency wise, skill wise, can you take an organization through a pandemic? Can you take an organization through a merger and acquisition? That grit
Mhm.
is very different than someone who is not self aware, who is expecting all of these things from their employer, but they can't lead them through transformational change, or they can't be a change maker, or they can't be an influencer. So I think self-awareness is critical. It's not only important professionally, but it's important personally. Really, where are you? If you were to do a heat map on yourself, where would you lie? Where do your skills lie in terms of what organizations truly need? And I think it's powerful when you can really step back and say, no, it's not about the environment. This is hard because I need to shore up some of my skills. It feels hard and it feels impossible, but maybe it feels that way because I've never experienced this before. And so this is a wonderful way for me to do something I've never done, to prove to myself I can do it, and to get the organization to the other side.
Mhm.
So I think it's a balance there, because there are many organizations and environments that you should not stay in. And I'm not a proponent of staying where you don't find joy in work. But I've also been an observer of many friends and many colleagues that are super smart, exceptionally intelligent, but they didn't give it a chance because their ego far exceeded their self-awareness.
Mhm.
And they were running trying to find that golden pot of gold that never existed in the first place had they just stayed, given it a chance, really done some work in terms of increasing their skills and competency. They could have made those situations work.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm over here nodding and smirking and all the things because I could not agree more. We have a our approach to leadership. We always say we take this inside out approach.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we do a lot of work with brand new managers. So a lot of times when you're just starting, you take the positioning from like a power perspective and you immediately go try to manage a team. And no, we're not thinking about the team just yet, friends. You have to start with you,
Yeah.
and when you get to, and that's the whole self-awareness and the EQ and, understanding who you are, what you want, where you find your joy, what value you add. And then you don't even go to the team next. You get to go to your individual relationships. It's not
Mm.
the whole yet. You have to manage those individually before you can think through the whole. And then the other you talked about, I love the term sort of do a heat map on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Where are you in terms of what the where within your organization and what the organization needs, and we talk about sort of elevating your strategic impact, right? And that fourth level of our inside out leadership is really getting outside of yourself and outside of your team and thinking about where do we all fit. It's one of those things, to your earlier point, that it comes with experience, with age, wisdom. When I look back, I see if I'd known these things, or if I'd taken this pause, or I'd recognized this, or if I look back, I saw, oh, that was me. That
Yeah.
that wasn't them, it was me. That's all coming together, and that's part of the reason why we do these conversations, right? Be able to have someone give us sort of their roadmap and those lessons early, so maybe if only we can avoid some of those pitfalls.
I was a great operator when I first got into leadership, but I was an immature leader. I
Mhm.
was a 25-year-old leader with a 25-year-old mind, looking for just tangibles. When I think about where I am now, I see so much growth in myself, and my discernment is so
Mhm.
much stronger. My confidence is so much stronger. And most importantly, I'm in leadership for the right reason.
Mhm, mhm,
It's not
mhm.
for those, just those titles and, making a certain salary. That doesn't define success versus Do I find joy in the work that I do? Am I making an impact? Can I influence others? So just looking back, it is so much more gratifying now to be in leadership because of that growth that I've experienced just personally.
Whew. Now, Now, Jeronica, that's a whole word right there. That is, as my mom would say, that right there, that'll preach. That will preach right there because it's even beyond leadership. It's this notion of define success for yourself because so often we are our version of success is influenced by everyone else, society, family, friends, culture. Everyone else is telling us what success looks like. And in my early coaching days, I will say the folks that came to me first were highly successful. They'd accomplished everything. They checked off all the boxes, and they would come and say, Denny, I'm miserable. I don't like this. This can't be all that there is. And so it's because they never took a break to say, what do I actually want?
Mhm.
How do I define success for me? And in words that resonate with me, and so that it's broader than a title. You said joy, impact, influence, broader than a title.
Yeah, I was my most miserable. I haven't always been happy professionally. When I was my least happiest professionally, two things resonated. The first is I wasn't happy professionally because I wasn't happy personally. And one bleeds into the other. Very hard to separate the two, no matter how hard you try. And then secondly, I was always chasing something, always chasing a title, always chasing a certain amount of money. So I was moving here and there, and I was chasing a superficial goal instead of allowing myself to bake, B-A-K-E, bake, to be a practitioner of the work, to learn the work inside and out, to hone better leadership skills. I was instead running after the next position or the next title. And so, those two things I've learned over time. If you really invest in your personal happiness, your health and well being, physical health, mental health, you are so much more happier at work. And then also, if you give yourself time to learn and to grow and develop, you will know when it's the right time to move to the next level instead of rushing it, but really feeling confident stepping into it. Big difference. Game changer for me all the way around.
It also leads to sort of this notion we always think that we know better, but for a long time we hear that your career progression is sort of this upward journey, and the truth of it is it's
Mhm.
not, and it shouldn't
Right.
be. And it is sort of the zigzag, and sometimes you go back and to go back up.
Absolutely.
And I'll say one of the things that I'd noticed as early in my career, I was trying to map the path to success, and I looked at everyone around me and how did they get
Mhm.
there? And most folks, my background is in manufacturing, I saw most folks go up this functional line. They picked a major, they were operations, or they were engineering, or they were marketing, their supply chain. They picked a major and they worked their way up that function. But what I noticed was that at a certain point, no matter what major they'd initially picked, they had to go wide. They had to go get some broader experiences, and what we were hearing was that if they'd gotten that cross-functional experience earlier, they'd be better off, right? And they could move faster. And people were, stalling because all they had was this one functional technical experience. And the folks who took a slower pace and hopped from operations, did a little marketing, did a little supply chain, right? Did other things, had a broader perspective and were able to navigate more easily after they got to the top. And so that was a nugget that came up as you were talking through that as well. So we are shifting gears a little bit because we've been talking about development and how you've been very intentional about your own development. And one of the things that I notice is that a lot of times we don't focus on our own development. We think that it is the responsibility of our employer. Someone else owns it. We sit in the passenger seat of development. And so I'd love to hear from you, someone leading at such a high level. How do you stay intentional about your own growth? What does personal leadership development look like for you today?
Sure. That's a that's a great question, an interesting question, and I chuckle a little bit because my answer is really simple because I have to. Just very early on, I come from a great family, middle class home, and all of the things. However, I wasn't given anything. I've had to work really, really hard. My parents have had to work really, really hard. And so I have always said that I will stay in control of my career. Now, that doesn't mean that an employer might not, make a decision about my employment, but that's not them having control of my career. And it really, for me, it has to be that way. If I lose control, then I lose my value system, how much I know that I'm worth in terms of what I bring to the table. If I lose control, then that allows people to dictate my journey, my next step. And I may want to be creative. I may want to step away from something and come back to something. I want to stay in control of that. And so for me, it's very simple. I know other people have long stories about the why for them, but for me, it's really a matter of survival. I have to invest in myself. I've always paid for my education. Quite frankly, tuition reimbursements at most organizations are very nominal. They don't cover it. So you end up taking out loans or paying in cash on your own anyway. I've done so many professional development classes, thousands of dollars outside of my employer over the years, and I will continue to do that. I have a long way to go in my mind, but I will always, that is a commitment that I have said from day one. I will always stay in control. And not only that, I will always have a plan B,
Mm.
always. Because the higher you elevate, that fall is much more drastic. And so it will behoove you, no matter what level you're in, to always be thinking about what tangible skills do I need to have in case plan A doesn't work.
Mm.
And one of the things that COVID has taught us is that trades are important. I have a lot of degrees. I have 4, and that is phenomenal and that is great. But one of the things my mother always told me, she always said, learn a skilled trade, whatever that means. But learn something outside of your educational parameters, because as long as you can speak, use your hands, you can always make money. And so, success, education, what makes you valuable, what makes you viable looks very different now. The world has shifted that in a lot of ways.
There's so many nuggets in here that I want to double tap on all of this. Like, I think what stands out really strongly to me, where I really just started nodding and couldn't stop the nodding, was not just the committed to having staying in control of your career, but this notion of owning the ability, like owning your value, knowing your worth. And my background has been with organizations where people stay for a long time, right? They graduate undergrad and they're staying at that facility, that organization until they retire.
That's not a bad thing.
And it's not.
No,
When it becomes a bad thing is when they feel stuck because they don't know what they can do. They don't know what they can command in the market. They don't know what else is out there. They feel like this is all
this is
that
all.
I can do because
Yeah.
they've now let this notion, this illusion of stability allow them to get complacent. And I think one of the things that COVID did, and we're in this environment of just a lot of uncertainty right now that's ongoing. What that is showing is that what we thought was stability,
Yeah.
it's not as stable as we thought it was. And so you have to be rooted in what you bring to the table. You have to be rooted in who you are and what you can command and how you can move things around and be versatile in the ways, and be able to see that. That is so powerful. And you've got to own it, because when you don't own it, it's like, paying for a gym membership and paying for a personal trainer. It creates a different commitment, a different level of intentionality around it. And so those are some of the nuggets that I heard come out as you were talking
But
through.
it's leadership, it's personal leadership. Think about it. When you're running an organization or a large department like I do, you have to be able to pivot. Just like personally, you have to be able to pivot. You have to be creative. One size does not fit all. How can we do things differently? One of the things that I thought was so innovative about my organization during COVID, there is a bank that has been vacant for many years. We set up a drive-through COVID system at that bank. The bank has a drive-through. Whoa, people can come and get shots through the drive-through. And so you have to be able to pivot, be creative, and take risks. At the top of the hour, you talked about having a very narrow vision, or line of sight. And when I think about people who get stuck, it's not because they're not smart, it's because they don't have a diversity of risk in their portfolio, in their life. They never move. Even if you work at one job, because I personally could have stayed at one employer my entire career, it's a phenomenal employer. But if I would have stayed, I would have required diversity in the roles
Mhm.
throughout that tenure. You can't get around the benefit of having diverse experiences. You just can't. You can't even put a value on it. It's so valuable, because when you have, and when you've seen, and when you've been able to engage with different people, different thoughts, different ideologies, then you require more.
Mhm. Mhm.
You don't require what you don't know. But when you've seen different, you do different. You require different, right? So, even if you're with that one employer, great, because I've moved around enough to appreciate stability,
Mhm.
you know? So there's some value in being in an employer that you feel safe, that your job is safe if
Mhm.
all other things are controlled. But even in that scenario, to your point, owning your professional development, you should raise your hand for those projects. You should ask to be able to expand your scope of responsibility for money or for not.
Mhm.
You should, engage in other departments that you've never engaged in. Do it anyway. So being at one employer doesn't mean that it limits you from success. You just have to look at it a different way.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, because it doesn't have to, for sure. And
Yeah.
one of the questions that I asked, I remember I asked myself this question, and then I encourage others, when you're thinking about, it's the same situation we were talking about, having the stick to itiveness, right?
Mhm.
It's the Is it the place, or is it everything going on around it? And for this
Right.
part, I always say, can I reach my potential here? That's sort of that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Can I get the experiences, the diversity of experiences? Can I grow and reach my potential in this environment? If
Right.
the answer is yes, then staying, you have more support, longevity of people who know you and have seen you, right? There's that
Mhm.
benefit, a shorthand have you. If the answer is no, and the only reason you're staying is because you're afraid or you don't know what else is going on, then that's a different discussion. And usually when it's the fear on the answer is no, it's because you haven't taken ownership of your development, of being clear on or even what you want, right? Being clear on what you want.
Yeah, I tell people to think about it this way. If you live to be 90 years old, which a lot of people do, there's a lot of blue zones in the US. People are living longer. That 5 years you were at a job is a dot in the continuum of your life. Think about it. You have 85 more years that you have lived outside of that one employer. It is a dot on the continuum of your life. So even if it doesn't work out, it's a dot. I mean, it's just one little mere meager experience. It will all come together, but it's just a dot.
It's just a dot.
It's
And
just a
your
dot.
and to your previous point earlier, that dot works for
Oh
several
yeah.
dots later, right? There's
Like,
value in the dot.
there's a value in a dot, but don't be so compelled and this is all I got.
Mhm.
5 years out of you've lived already 50, you have 45 other years to lean on. That was just 5 years. That's it. It's just important for people to be able, and I had to learn this because I am a reformed workaholic.
Mhm.
And I had to learn this. Don't put your happiness in a job. You can't do it. Or even an employer, or even a career. You have to be able to mentally disconnect when necessary. And COVID was a great example of that. But even beyond COVID, you have to be able to say, I love it. I love it here. I was telling myself this just this week, actually. I was like, oh my God, I love my job and I love my employer. I'm like, I love it. And then, but I've started talking to myself and I said, Jeronica, but don't be so in love that you cannot detach if necessary. If they decide or if you decide,
Mhm.
it will be okay. I
Mhm.
had to remind myself and come down because I was like, wow, I know a lot of people can't say that. I'm so thankful. I'm so grateful. But in this moment, I don't know how long it will last. I love my job and I love my employer. But don't be so in love that if something tragic happens, voluntarily or involuntarily, or maybe it's not even tragic, but it's a necessary detachment that has to happen. Be okay.
Yeah.
You have to remind yourself of that. It's okay. It will be okay. And while they're wonderful, they're not the only. They're not the only. As great as it feels and as great as it is right now, anything could happen. It's okay. And I had to remind myself of that, because I was walking into work and going to a meeting, and I was like, wow, I really love coming to work. It's not a lot of people that can say that. And I absolutely love where I work. It's not a lot of people that can say that. But then I just said to myself, don't be so in love, Jeronica. Anything could happen. Don't be so in love.
That leads so powerful. It leads me to sometimes the note sounds so beautiful that it is just like that's it, right? And so it leads me to like my last two questions are pretty much related. We may have actually touched it. So the first one is usually sort of what's the the piece of feedback that you've received over the years that really
Mhm.
stuck with you and stood out. And the last one was like what you'd leave us with. So your closing advice or guidance. So start with like over the years, right? Has there been one piece of advice or feedback that really stuck with you? Like something that maybe shifted the way you show up, shifted the way you lead that you really held on to?
I would say, and I mentioned it earlier, just to touch on it, my mentor told me long time ago when social media was starting to be aware of your personal brand because people will not separate it.
Hmm.
They're going to look on your social media and say, she works for XYZ
Yeah.
or she is a part of XYZ. They're not going to say, oh, this is her personal website or her
Yeah.
personal. They're going to say they're going to identify you by who you are and where you work in your community. So he told me, he said, be sure that your personal and professional brand are in alignment. And that
Mhm.
really, really stuck with me. That was one thing. The other thing came from a former CEO of a organization early in my career. And I was an intern, and he said, be friendly, not familiar.
Mm.
And that CEO is now in his 80s, and I've talked to him recently, and I reminded him that he told me that 30 years ago, and it never left me. And what that means is in a professional setting, you don't really need to know me. You need to be familiar with me. I need to be welcoming and engaging and be able to pull people in. But I need to have a separation so that I can make non biased, objective decisions. And that has really helped me because I've worked alongside people and then I've become their boss.
Mhm.
Being in the HR space, I make a lot of decisions about people's employment, sometimes fortunately or unfortunately. But for those moments that I've had to make a very, very hard decision, it was easier for me to do because I was
Mhm.
friendly, not familiar. I was friendly, I was professional, but I wasn't so close to that individual that I could not make the right decision. So those are the two pieces of advice that have always stuck with me. What I would leave as a piece of just advice or commentary as we conclude this experience in this wonderful safe space that you've created for me is trust yourself. Trust your gut feeling. There's a book that I read many, many years ago that a lot of HR people read, but I think it's good for anybody, and it's called More Than a Gut Feeling. And that is true. Use your sixth sense. It will tell you where to go, it will tell you how to move, it will tell you who to engage. That internal discernment will save you.
Mhm.
And I think not enough people trust themselves. They don't have confidence in themselves, and they're not able to take the risks necessary, not only professionally, but personally, to love life to its fullest because they don't trust their sixth sense. They don't trust that feeling that not in their stomach that they get when they know it's right or when they know it's wrong.
Mhm.
So my last words of advice in anything that you do, personally, professionally, is to trust yourself. You will always have your back and you will always have your best interests. No one can take that away from you unless you give it away.
I love it. I love it. Listen, Jeronica, it has been such an incredible conversation. Your insights on trust, stick to itiveness, development, career ownership, investing in yourself and investing in your people. That's the kind of leadership workforces need so much more of, especially in these high stakes, human centered environments like you're in healthcare. And so I really appreciate you spending the time with us today, sharing your history, your wisdom, well earned wisdom on your journey of leadership. Really appreciate this has been powerful. I've got some nuggets here myself. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm honored. Thank you.
Absolutely. So at Culture Conversations, we believe great leaders aren't born, they're built. And that happens through intention, through learning, and through refining at every step of the way. So until next time, keep leading boldly, keep investing in your people, and keep refining your leadership.